Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Forged in the Spirit podcast. Hope everybody's had a good week. It has been a good week on my end. Been very busy. See, the weather up here in northwestern PA has been wild. It's been raining a lot of flooding. Spent the past couple weeks going out and taking care of that, and tried to mow the grass today, and man, it was tough. It was a tough day to want to mow the grass. I know I left a lot of tire marks from the mower out there, but got it done. Looks a lot better, and I know it's just going to shoot back up with the weather we're going to have, but something that definitely needed done. On the other note, I just want to say thank you and how much I appreciate every single one of you that listens to the podcast. It has been way more successful in the past couple months than I ever thought it was going to be. You take your time out of your day, whether you're at work or on your way or at home, just relaxing to listen, and I am just appreciate everything you guys are doing for this ministry, because this isn't all just on my own. It's from the generous people who pray and donate and make this really happen, and my mentors who are beside me the whole time. And that's kind of what I talk about today. I'm talking about a little bit about, your walk with God and discipleship and walking your faith walk and certain things that happen in your life you never thought are going to happen. So, you often think about all the people that are out there preaching or evangelizing or doing God's work in whichever way it is, whatever ministry it is. There's so many different ways that you can use your gifts. And, I look at myself as just a blue collar worker. I mean, I grew up in a small town. I have been doing work in a mill or a shop, and now working out on the roadway with the Department of Transportation in Pennsylvania here. Just an ordinary guy with an ordinary job, no special gifts. And that was where it really resonated when I was called into ministry in some aspect. When you're called into ministry and you don't even know it, like when I became a youth leader, I didn't think of that anymore as a call to ministry other than just doing something I thought was right in the moment. And without realizing how much of a call it was until I was called into pastoral ministry back in 2019, going to laity school, and then my DS at the time asking me to help out these couple churches. And honestly, I said no. I mean, I think we've talked about that in prior podcasts about how I denied doing it because I didn't think I had the right knowledge or the right gifts to do it. Well, God spoke to me and said, this is what you're supposed to be doing. And I'm not going to let down God when he calls me after everything he did for me. I can tell you that. And so going into that thinking, what do I have to offer? What's the kind of something special I have to offer? And you don't realize how God has used ordinary people throughout the history of time. I mean, these people were chosen by him to do certain things, and we see a lot of the stories and how big of an impact they are, but you don't realize that they didn't start out as these well-known people. I mean, they were common, ordinary people. And one specifically that I've talked about in some of the churches that I've preached at is Peter. We see Peter as this big figure in biblical history. The rock, the original rock, not Dwayne the Rock Johnson, but the rock in which Jesus was going to build his church. And how impactful he was going to be in the history of biblical text. But who was Peter before he was this great apostle? Peter was just an ordinary man. Peter was a fisherman. He just went out and fished to provide for his family, and he didn't think he was going to be any more than that. That was his job. That was what he was supposed to do. And and like us, Peter had his good days and he had his bad days. Well, where the story begins for Peter was on a bad day. He was out fishing, he didn't catch anything. He came in the shore defeated for the day. All he wanted to do was tend to his nets and get everything going so he could just go back home and relax and just wake up and tomorrow be a new day. Well, here comes this Jesus who he had heard about. I'm sure there was a lot of grumbling at the time. And he goes, Peter, I know. I want you to go out and I want you to cast your net on the other side of the boat. And you can only imagine Peter just looking at me like, it's been a long day. Just, we're ready to be done. Well, just trust me. And, to trust this person he's never really met before, to go out there and cast his nets. And that's exactly what he did. And what he got was something so much bigger than what his boat could handle that he had to call in backups to help him get all these fish that he was getting. And he seen right then and there the power in which this Jesus had. So he decided he was going to take up everything, put everything off to the side and follow this Jesus. Now you're looking at an ordinary man that was a fisherman, and Peter, and Jesus chose him to be one of his disciples, not just one of them, but one of the greatest ones that he had, one that he was going to be right beside the whole time. And so, you look at Peter and you think, oh, well, Jesus taught him, grabbed a hold of him and showed him all this stuff, and, he's going to never do any wrong, he's never going to have any problems, but that is farther from the truth. And we know that Peter had such a deep relationship with Jesus. And the thing that we see in Peter is, he didn't want Jesus to suffer and die. And there's a text in between the two of them where Jesus predicts his death, and Peter says, absolutely not. This will never happen to you. And Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. Because Peter was more focused on what he wanted in life versus what was God's plan. And we often get caught up in that in our own lives. I know I do. I know, like when I said I denied taking the position was because I didn't want to do it. It wasn't more plain and simple than I just didn't want to do it. I didn't feel like I had the proper knowledge. I had the proper time. It was all that stuff. And, God took me in and said, you're allowing the world and you're allowing yourself to make a path over the one that I am laying for you. And that's exactly what Jesus was doing. Jesus was on a path in which God had made for him. This all had to happen for our lives to be transformed, for that sin to be taken away. Jesus had to be the sacrifice. And he was showing Peter in that moment, it's not about you, it's about me. And that's the gospel itself. The gospel itself is not about you, it's what Jesus did for you. We need to understand that life is so much more than the small things or the money or anything like that. To glorify yourself is not going to make you happy. How many people do you know that have a lot of money and think they just have the world, in their hands, are unhappy most of the time because they are trying to fill this void with this worldly thing that disappears. Jesus never disappears. Jesus is forever, and God made this plan so you could have a knowledge of your purpose, a knowledge that you don't have to be alone, that your path is being laid out right before you. He's paving it. He's paving it right to heaven. You just got to get on that path and follow it, and he's going to use you, and he's going to give you a gift to use. And that's something I'm grateful for. I have never taken a public speaking class. I didn't do very good in school, but here I am sharing the Gospels with all of you listening, with all these different churches, with my family, and with my friends and coworkers because of a gift that God gave me and gave me the ability to use. He gave me this voice, He gave me this purpose. And, Peter had to see that firsthand in Jesus' voice when he used Satan as the turning point in which showing Peter, this isn't about you. And then we look down the road to Peter again, having this conversation with Jesus at the Last Supper when everybody was arguing about, who was the one that was going to turn Jesus in. And we seen that a couple weeks ago. We talked about the Last Supper and talked about how he was going to get turned over and all those things. And all the disciples were looking at each other, yelling at each other, who was going to be the one. And, Peter says, I love you too much. And Jesus goes, well, before the rooster crows, you're going to deny me 3 times. You're going to admit that you never even knew me. And Peter's, you can only imagine his thought process in that moment. But it happened exactly that way. It happened exactly that people were looking at Peter, and you're one of his followers. No, I'm not. This is the man that followed Jesus. And that, no, I don't. And I don't know this man. And the rooster crows, and he understands. In which Jesus was saying that sometimes we are weak in our mentalities, and we want to think that we're greater than him, that we never do any wrong, that we never do anything bad. But the fact of the matter is, we're all human, and we all do things that take away from the fact of our Christian faith and our Christian walk, saying things that we don't mean. Breaking the 10 Commandments, we do more than we ever could think. But Jesus is in control of these things because he sees these things that are happening. And Peter is a human being, and yes, he was chosen by Jesus, and he was a great apostle. But Jesus wanted to let him know, you really got to give your all into this, and that's exactly what we need to do. We need to give our all into our faith walks. I know I shared at my church, my home church on Easter Sunday. I got up front and kind of shared a little thing. Thank you to my pastor for kind of just letting me get up there and say a few things. It wasn't, even meant to be, but it happened, and talked about how, during Lenten season, we have Palm Sunday and Maundy, Thursday, Good Friday, Easter Sunday, and, not a lot of people immerse themselves into those things, but, immersing yourself into the stories and into the way that this all has happened in our faith walk and what it all means helps us understand the importance of our way of life. And the world wants to grab a hold of us so much. I mean, I know I had a discussion with some people about, well, I don't want to go to a place where I can't drink every day, or I'm going to go here because this is where all my friends will be. The world has such a grasp on us in the way that we want to live our lives that we totally forget about the one who made us who we are and made us individuals and gave us different gifts to use for good in the world. We're the first ones to complain when the world sucks, but we're also the first ones to only look after ourselves and nobody else. And we have our own way we want to live our life. We have our own way of doing things that we don't want anybody else coming in and telling us what to do or how to do it. But we're all told we are all one body with different moving parts, just like a body works. And we're all not going to be an arm. We're not all going to be a leg. We're not all going to be a brain. We're not all going to be a heart. But we all have to work together to make the body work. And, we were created in His image and given this life in which we can communicate with each other and be there for each other and show purpose to one another. And we're more worried about little things than we are this big picture and this big way of life. And Peter, being this ordinary man, shows us that Jesus picks ordinary people to do extraordinary things. I love that saying. It's so true. that's what happens. And we're this tool that can be used for good. And we're called to bring the kingdom here on earth. And that's what I want you to reflect on. I want you to reflect on, knowing that you are so much more than what you think. You are worth so much more than what you think. And you have a purpose. And there's no social hierarchy. There's no money that can buy you these gifts. You can't go to a spiritual gift store and buy your gift. You're given it because God has chosen each one of you, each one of us, to do something for the kingdom. So in this week, I want you to reflect on that. Ordinary people do extraordinary things. God chose his 12 disciples, 11 of them being ordinary who didn't have any high stance in society. They were fishermen. They were beat down tax collectors. They were sinners. And God chose them and used them. Jesus chose them and used them. I want you to all have a safe week. Email me any questions. Still looking for some interviewees. If you're interested, let me know on Facebook page or on email. I just appreciate every single one of you. Thank you for everything you do.